Welcome to Moving Mom and Downsizing Dad, the podcast that prepares you for one of life's toughest yet inevitable moments, stepping in when your parents need you most. Hosted by Chris Spade, a senior real estate specialist with Keller Williams Realty. We'll dive deep into more than just moving. We're talking smart financial planning, making tough decisions with confidence, and strategies to avoid being caught in crisis mode. Join us for real stories, expert insights, and actionable steps to stay ahead of the curve. Now, here's your host, Chris Spade.
Hey there, I'm Chris Spade with Keller Williams Realty, San Diego Metro, realtor and probate specialist, and your host of Moving Mom and Downsizing Dad. If you are the go-to son, daughter, or friend helping a loved one navigate the maze of selling a long-time home, you are in the right place. Today, I'm flying solo to tackle 10 of the top questions you ask the most: when to start the downsizing talk, how to dodge probate headaches, and whether reverse mortgage is a genius or a gimmick. And we're going to talk about a lot more. Now, in just 20 minutes, you're going to walk away with practical step-by-step answers to save money, time, and family sanity. So grab your coffee, let's get real, and maybe stress relief tea. Let's get into it. All right, so these are the top 10 questions that you all have been dropping in the comments or sending me text messages. So I wanted to go over them because I think that they're all important. Question number 1, when should I start talking to mom or dad about downsizing? I said this before, I will say it again, earlier than you think, okay? The conversation begins before a health crisis forces a timeline. Remember, the reason I started this podcast was simply because there was a health crisis that forced a timeline. And my friends were put into a situation where they don't necessarily love. They're safe, which is good. They're in a situation where they're absolutely 100% safe, but they are not 100% happy. So you want to have this conversation a lot earlier than you think, because you don't want a fall, a stroke, any sort of other physical capability to go downhill. You don't want any of that. Use soft openers like, what would make your life living here easier, okay? Whether or not they want to stay in their home. A lot of people want to stay in their home. This question gauges readiness. What would it look like? Or what do the next 5 years look like for you? They may say they don't know, or they may say something like, I can't see myself living here anymore because it's a 2-story house, or they might say, I want to live here as long as I can. At least you're gauging the readiness, but it's always good to have that conversation before any crisis ends up taking place. Now, one of the things you want to do is you want to frame this transition as gaining freedom and not giving up their independence. So many people, and we will experience this at some point, where we feel like our independence is being taken away from us. So you want to make sure that you frame it in such a way that their freedom is actually being given to them because they're getting a little extra help along the way. So keep that in mind as you start having this conversation. But again, you want to have it a lot earlier than you think, because you do not want to have a health crisis force that timeline. Second question, how do you bring up selling the family home without sparking any sort of emotional backlash? First and foremost, you have to lead with empathy, okay? Leading with empathy, acknowledging memories before discussing logistics. You do not want to start. If you're the type A person, the planner person, the person that is structured, and you have this idea, right? Like you have this idea in your head. Now, if you listen to my podcast with Dave, you know that there's no right time to sell the family house, but you need an at least minimum of 90 days to make your loved one, your parent, your friend, whoever, feel like they're not being rushed. So you don't want to lead with logistics. You want to remember, take it to a neutral place. Take it out of the family home. Take them to lunch, take them to coffee, take them to a picnic in the park. Do something and where you're not in the house, because there's a lot of emotion attached to the house. You want to be in a neutral setting. And if it's just you, or maybe you and your other family member, you just want to make sure it's a very neutral place and it's not coming from a place of aggression. Okay, and that's really important. Focus on goals, right? Safety, less upkeep, closer to the grandkids if that's the case. So if you're moving your loved one across state lines to another state, remember when I talked to Deborah, her mom's goal was just to be closer to her daughters, which meant going from their home to the West Coast, from her home to the West Coast. So you want to make sure that you focus on the goals of your loved one, because your loved one, trust me, has probably thought a lot about this, about what the future looks like. And they're just probably scared because they don't know where to turn and they don't want to be forced into anything too quickly. Remember, the older we get, the less we like change. So that's really important. The third thing is, talk to people to offer professional help, like myself, a realtor. We can get a senior move manager. We can get the gals from Sorted Out San Diego, Jamie and Tori. Or we can get all those people in, so that way it shifts the stress of the parent-child dynamic. You want to bring in the professionals to help out with this process, because you don't have to go it alone. But if you are, and it's not in your budget to hire, let's say, a move manager or a company to help declutter the house, remember, take it step by step. Take the linen closet. Organize and donate the linen closet. Do you need 12 towels in the linen closet? The answer is probably no. You really only need like 4 or 5. So let's donate the rest of those. Let's make that easier, because it's easier for someone to give up towels than to give up something like their mother's china from, the turn of the century, right? Probate. Let's talk about probate. We had a mashup of Sandy Isaac again on last week. Probate, it still is confusing you. What is it and how do you avoid it? The big thing about probate is that you have to remember that it is a very long process. It can take anywhere from 9 to 18 months, maybe 2 years, depending on where you are in California. Some of the counties are longer, but as Sandy said, you could be her client for up to 2 years. So probate is the court process that validates a will and transfers assets. Now, if you have a will, if you don't have a will, it still does the same thing. But remember, a will does not avoid probate. It's a trust that avoids probate. Sandy talks about how a trust is a contract. And this contract, the court doesn't have to validate the trust, because you've said, while you're alive, this is what I want. This is who I want in charge of the trust. This is where I want my assets to go. This is how they are to be divided. This is what I want to have happen. So you avoid a probate by having your home in a trust. But just keep in mind, just because you have a will, first of all, a will does not stop probate. And a will has to be validated in probate. Remember, probate is open book, right? Like, everybody knows your business after you're gone. Everybody's going to know about your debts. They're going to know about your assets. They're going to know all these things. And because it's going to have to go, it's public record, right? It's an open book, whereas having a trust isn't. Now, trust, the bad news is there's some upfront planning costs. You're going to have to pay, a basic trust is going to depend on the attorney that you hire, how much it costs, to how complicated is your trust and what kind of ancillary documents are in there. Sandy talks about getting, you can get a medical power of attorney. If mom or dad becomes incapacitated, you can handle all their banking and assets if they, God forbid, go into memory loss or memory care, or, get some sort of dementia or Alzheimer's. So there's many things that layer on top of that. And that's why you need to speak to an attorney who specializes in estate planning, like Sandy Isaac. I'm not an attorney, so I can't give that advice. These are just the things that she and I have talked about on our podcast. And so if you need to get in touch with her, I would definitely do that. Let's talk about pre-sale improvements to the house. Okay, which one gives seniors the biggest bang for their buck? First and foremost, we've already talked about this, decluttering. Declutter your house, okay? That is going to be the biggest one. Declutter, clean, and stage the house. Now, it can be with your own furniture, but we want to pare it down. We want the house to look as big as it can. You know, even if it's an 800 square foot house, you can make that house feel a lot bigger with the way you position the furniture and the things that you do in the house. So this is going to give it the highest perceived value boost, is decluttering and staging. That's why it's so important for folks and the gals like at Sorted Out San Diego to come in and help y'all. I'm not that person. I could probably use the girls to come into my house right now. But you know, we're not moving anytime soon, but probably when we do, we might just have them come in and go, okay, let's do it. And I'm not even a senior, but you don't have to be a senior. Number 2, safety fixes. Do anything sort of repairs. I always recommend that sellers do a pre-home inspection on the property, whatever the inspector says. Get any additional inspections done on the property. This is going to tell you exactly what's wrong with the house. So that way you can price the house accordingly. One of the things we don't want is we don't want anyone coming in offering, like, let's say we put $800,000 on your house, but we don't want anyone coming in to pay $800,000, then turn around and do an inspection on the property and then want a $100,000 discount for things that we could have done our homework on ahead of time, like having the sewer scope inspected. That might be a big issue, and that could be about $30,000, $40,000. The roof, that could be another issue right now because insurance, this is the thing you have to know. Doing these things ahead of time is going to stop a lot of the negotiation down the road. So what's happening is, for insurance purposes, and this is why sellers need to know this, this is so important, is that sellers are sometimes having to replace roofs because banks will not, or I'm sorry, insurance companies will not insure certain houses unless the insurance company will cover 100% of the roof replacement costs. And if you can't get insurance on that house, that means that buyer can't get the loan. So it's important for sellers to know the struggles that buyers are going through and to make sure that everything is good. Because if we have the documentation that we can give to the buyer's lender that says our roof is 3 years old, the lender is going to feel a lot more comfortable, and the insurance company is going to feel a lot more comfortable lending and insuring this house. So we need to know these things ahead of time. That's why I always recommend get the inspections done, get the termite inspection, get the termite work done if you can ahead of time. It's a little bit of a hassle, but ahead of, pre-planning and getting all that stuff done is absolutely paramount, I think. The other thing you want to do is make sure you have neutral colors, neutral paint, fresh hardware, make any sort of, get the house deep cleaned and then change out hardware, lighting, put new lighting in the house. Can lighting goes a long way in the house. Get an electrical inspection if you can, and it's within the budget. Get the electrical boosted, because that's one big thing people always come back and want. Well, I always come back when I'm representing buyers and I want the electrical boosted up. So that's another big thing that you want to do. You want to make sure that the electrical is in good shape. So do these inspections ahead of time. Do this. There's going to be a lot less negotiation on the back end, and you're going to find that you're going to have a much easier transaction. Are you learning something new? Tap that follow or subscribe button right now so you never miss an episode. We drop fresh, no flip guidance every single week, and it's the fastest way to turn confusion into confidence. Plus, it'll help more families find the show when you leave a quick rating. So click the subscribe. Let's keep easing down this downsizing journey together. All right, let's get back to the show. All right, let's talk reverse mortgages. Are reverse mortgages even smart for aging parents. Okay. Now, Rosemary Latoff came on. I've referred her to a couple of clients already. Actually, my clients are in love with the fact that they can get a reverse mortgage because a couple of things, you don't have to have an income, and your credit score doesn't have to be super great because the lender is taking a risk on the equity in the property, down the road. But they are great for, cash flow rich and the asset poor seniors who plan to age in place for at least 5+ years. Now, here's the thing. You do have to take a HUD approved counseling class. It is mandatory and it is invaluable, but you need to have that before signing up for it. And I believe the class, if I'm not mistaken, is 8 hours. So you definitely need that. Reverse mortgages are great. Once you buy a place, let's say the place is $600,000. You're buying a condo in Mission Valley. Let's say you put $300,000 down. You're not going to have a mortgage payment anymore. So you're taking that mortgage payment away. Let's say we sell your property and your property is paid for in cash. You go and put $300,000 down and you've got another $200,000 left you can keep in your bank account. Then what we do is you move into your new place. You're not making any payments, right? You're not making any payments for the time that you live there. When you move, or if you moved into another living situation, we could sell that property, or you pass it down to your heirs, and they can deal with it on the back end. But you're not the one that's having to make those payments. So you're just paying your utility bills, any HOA fees that you might have. You can also pull out, this kind of equity as well. So there's so many things that you can do. But if you want and have questions about reverse mortgages, listen to the episode with Rosemary, or drop a comment below and I'll make sure that I connect you directly to her because she is the expert in this area. But yeah, reverse mortgages, they are a good thing if you can qualify for one. All right, let's talk 1031 exchanges. And these are so much fun to talk about. Okay, can a 1031 exchange help my parents downsize and keep an investment income? Okay, so a 1031 exchange, just so everyone is clear exactly what a 1031 exchange is when you take an investment property and you exchange it for like kind. It also has to be equal to or greater than the value of the relinquished property. So let's say we sell a place for $1 million, you have to buy at least $1 million or more on the up leg. It's called the up leg. That's what you do. Now, let's say you sell a 4-unit property for $1 million, and then we buy a commercial property or another 4-unit property in a different neighborhood that's going to get you more income. And let's say you buy that for $1.2 million and you carry a mortgage for $200,000, or you bring in $200,000 cash, and that gives you more rental income. So you can do that. That's one option. The other thing you can do is, like we talked about with Eric Barbarita, and that is to do a Delaware statutory trust. And that is the same thing. It is, you are able to exchange it. You sell the relinquished property for, let's say, $1 million, and then you roll it over into this DST. Now you're eliminating your tenants, right? You're eliminating your repairs. You're eliminating people not paying their rent, right? Because you're investing in this 400-unit complex in Dallas, Texas. You're not having to deal with any of that stuff. And so Eric can position you into the right DST, and you're getting a check every single month, just like you would when you were having tenants, except you're not having to deal with the headaches. So it's a constant income. Now, here's the thing. DSTs are transferable upon death. So that means that, let's say you get into this DST today, and the DST is going to run another 7 years, right? And let's say your loved one passes in the next 3 years. Okay, they can put in the trust that they want their DST to go to you, and you get that check every single month. You have to stay into the DST until the DST gets ready to sell, and then you can cash out, or you can take that money and you can go into another DST, or you can take it and you can buy another property. Remember, this is all rental income. 1031s you cannot do on your primary residence. I once had an agent say to me during the showing, this agent was from a different state, and they were saying, "Oh, yeah, my relative is going to 1031 exchange their house." And I was like, "You can't 1031 exchange a primary residence." And he was trying to argue with me. It is not a primary residence. It is rental income property only. Only rental income property, not a primary residence. But there's so many things you can do to avoid that capital gains tax, and then make sure that your loved one has monthly income. All right, this next question, taxes. What taxes hit us when we sell a long-time primary residence? So Lacey Italiano went over this, our enrolled agent from Italiano Tax Services. You know, you get that $500,000 capital gains exclusion for married couples and $250,000 for single. That still applies. Now, the biggest surprise, state tax, people, especially if you're selling an investment property in California, it's 3 1/3. So it's always wise when you're getting ready to sell to make sure that you talk to a tax preparer beforehand. Remember, Lacey suggests that when you buy a house, and I always tell people this, when you buy your house, make sure that you keep a binder of everything that you've done. Because when you go to sell that property, you want to be able to have your tax person whittle down the amount of tax that they are going to be able to help you save, right? So if let's say your gain is $600,000, you have $100,000 exposure, but let's say you've invested $50,000 in your house, like a sewer line, a roof, kitchen remodel, whatever it is you did over the years. It might even be more than that, and you might be able to cover that $100,000, and then you wouldn't have a gain. But these are the questions you need to ask a tax professional. But save all that stuff, because by saving that, having those receipts, just whittle, and just it goes all the way down. You whittle it away, and you whittle away that tax, which is what you want to do. So yeah, but just keep in mind, $500,000 for married, $250,000 for single. That is a good place to start with your capital gains exclusion. Number 8, what hidden costs come with assisted living communities or continuing care communities? First of all, entrance fees, sometimes refundable, but they have different ranges. So like the villas, they only charge you $1,000, and they call it a community fee. Some of the community fees, $8,000, $9,000, $12,000, and that's to get the rooms ready. The community that we ended up placing my friend in memory care, that community fee was $2,800, and that's to get the room ready. So this is what you want to be aware of. So these are the questions that you want to ask. So, are there any annual increases that you need to budget for? Typically, there is going to be an increase if there's a change in the level of care. So say, for example, you go from independent living and you go up to assisted living. So you go from independent to assisted, there's going to be a change there. Is there any inflation increases? You want to know that. What are the upcharges in case your health needs arise? So, these are all things that you're going to want to ask. And I'm going to have a list of questions for you. So that way, once you're there, these are the questions that you can ask any sort of facility, community rather, that you're going to, because you want to be aware of all the charges up front. This next question is pretty funny. Is how do I survive an estate sale without losing my mind? Well, I would definitely hire someone like Ray Ione, who does estate sales. I wouldn't try to do it on my own unless you just really want to. But I would hire somebody, because they are going to make sure that your headaches are a minimum. I wouldn't try DIYing it myself. Especially if it's a big estate, like if your parents had a big house and a lot of stuff, I would probably do that. The other thing I would do is agree with your family what you're going to keep versus what you're going to sell before the day you start putting prices and tags on everything. Make sure the family comes over and gets what they want prior to the estate sale, because once it's there and everything's tagged and everyone's looking around and everyone's buying, there's no backseas, right? So I would definitely do that. And then I would have a charity pickup and haul away the day after the sale. So you're having a sale, like let's say you have it on Saturday, Sunday. The day after, on Monday, I would have a charity come haul it all away. So that way you're not dealing with it. You're not having people come pick back through it even more. That is the big thing I would do. But for me, I would probably just hire somebody like Ray, because he's just got a streamlined process that is going to make the whole thing easier, and you're not going to have to worry about it whatsoever. Number 10, and this is a big one. Any tips for keeping siblings on the same page during the process? What I would do, especially if your family members are in different states, set up regular family Zooms with clear agendas and action items. That's the first thing I would do. You want to make sure that everybody is on board. I worked with one family one time where they were going through probate. There was 7 kids, but my client, who was the only one that I had to answer to because she was the administrator of the probate, of the probate that we were selling the house, even though she had the last say, she always wanted to bring her siblings in on the conversation. And I let her have those conversations because I did not want to be a part of them, because it wasn't my job to inform them of what was going on, which I thought was very nice of her. She didn't have to do that, but she did because she wanted to keep everybody on the same page. I would assign roles to my siblings. One take the finance, one take logistics. So everyone feels useful. You make everybody in the family feel useful, give them a job, whether it's helping declutter, whether it's helping set up the estate sale, the garage sale, whatever it is. Just, fill in that role and make sure everyone has a role. And then the other thing is I would bring in a neutral third party. When it comes to selling, if it's in a trust, there's one person in charge of selling that property. If there's a probate and there's an administrator or an executor, there's one person in charge of selling that property. And so bring in professional. If you have to, bring in a mediator. If your emotions get too high or there is a stall in any sort of decisions or discussions, that's really important because, I know a lot of families have a lot of conflict. I've been there before. So you just want to make sure that everything goes as smoothly as possible. All right, that is a wrap for today's lightning round of Q&A. If one of these answers sparked a deeper question for you or your family, let's talk. Head to the show notes for a link to my free free from clutter to close checklist and no pressure 15-minute strategy call. I always write these tongue twisters. They sound great when I write them, but then they get twisty when I start talking. Now remember, Moving Mom and Dad isn't just a real estate transaction. It's a life transition, and you don't have to figure it out all by yourself. Give us a call. We've got the resources to help. Thanks so much for listening to Moving Mom and Downsizing Dad. I'm Chris Spade with Keller Williams San Diego Metro. I'm signing off till next week, when we'll dive into fresh strategies to make the move a little easier and a lot less stressful. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.